Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. My name's William, this is Assetto Corsa Competizione, and today I'm going to be driving the Porsche 991 GT3R around Barcelona Catalunya. This is a car I absolutely love, but hate to set up in the game. It's quite tricky, takes a lot of time, so I've been putting some time into this one. And like I said, I got Catalunya fever, so I figured I'd go ahead and try and finish it off and get it out to you guys. So I hope you all enjoy it. As always in this video, I'm going to have my Hotlap and then the setup for you as well. Gonna go over the setup with some adjustments and tweaks you can potentially make to improve the way that this car drives for you if you don't exactly like the way I had it set up. There'll be some good information in there for you. As always, I want to say thank you all so much for the support. If you do like the video, give it a like. It helps me out a ton. And subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Y'all are awesome. Let's go ahead and get on into the hot lap, and I'll be back to talk to you guys through the setup. Alright, that was a hot lap around Catalunya in the Porsche 991 GT3R. You can see the time here is a 1:43.518. We'll take a look at the timetable real quick as well. You can see the sector times there. I was working on this setup for a while. I always seem to have to work on my Porsche setups for a little while longer. So today, just loading in, trying to dial a couple things out and go for that lap time. Ultimately, wound up getting it even with a less than stellar lap. If you watched it, sure you saw ran a little bit too deep into the hairpin and a little bit of understeer in a couple of the other corners. So definitely think that there's some more time in it, which is always nice, but nevertheless a properly good time for me around Catalunya in the car. As always, I did start with the aggressive preset, but ultimately this is what I wound up with. So we'll just kind of go through it real quick. My front tire pressures, what I'm aiming for is about 28 psi. No hotter than that. No, peaking around 28 psi is kind of what I'm looking for. And on the rear, pretty standard, about 27.5 psi, somewhere around there for the hot tire pressure on the rear. I do want to talk about on the car, for the rear of the car, I do have a really low camber setting on the rear. If you're going for a qualifying run, I think that you could probably up the camber on the rear to about -3.4, somewhere around there. I wouldn't go any higher than that. In all honesty, I don't feel like you gain much more beyond that, but I wound up taking it lower as I was just trying to keep the rear tire temperatures in check. It's something I've noticed on especially some of my older setups, and in the Porsche particularly, it's pretty hard on its rear tires, and trying to keep the tire temperatures balanced over a lap is pretty important, as well as you don't want to be especially overheating your rears if you're going for a longer race your car balance is kind of going to go away quite quickly. And I know some of my older setups are pretty bad about that. I know this car and specifically the McLaren, the 720S, are really bad about that, and I'm just trying to find ways to work around it and improve it as I continue making these. So hopefully it's a little bit better in this one, and we can keep making it better in the future. On my electronics here, I was running the TC on 3, ABS on 3, ECU map on 8. That is the fastest ECU map. It doesn't make any sense to me either, but you know, thanks Porsche. It'd make a lot more sense if it was ECU map 1, and they just got slower after that. But nope, ECU map 8, fastest one, TC2 on 3 as well. These settings are all pretty personal, but for the track I was running on, it's what felt good to me. Ultimately, if you want to, you should play with these. These settings aren't that big of a deal, and you can kind of play with it and figure out what feels good for you, especially depending on your track conditions at the time. For the brake pad compounds, I was running it on 2 for this, for the front and rear. It's a longer setup for the brake pad compound. If you're doing qualifying or a short sprint race, less than, I think that on brake pad compound 1 they say it's good for like 90 minutes, but I'd always go a little bit less than that. So if you're doing like an hour-long race or something like that, you could probably try out brake pad compound 1. If it's any longer than that, I'd probably just stick with 2. The difference isn't that huge anyways, and 2 provides a really good feel from this car. On the suspension side of things, this is another setting I always say it's pretty personal, and you shouldn't be afraid to play with it, especially even if you're not totally comfortable with setups or anything like that. Is the brake bias. I always move it back. It helps me really be able to drive the car into some of the corners and trail the brake the way I want, get the feel from the brakes I want. I feel like I could still go further back on this brake bias, but ultimately I was getting a better feel. It's most noticeable in the corners where it's not a heavy braking zone, but just a tap of the brakes or something like that, where you're just kind of loading the nose up and then lifting off the brake a little bit. That's where you're really going to notice your brake bias differences. So don't be afraid to play with that if you need to increase it or decrease it, and just kind of get an idea of what it does to the car as you do it. It's really not a huge deal. And this car is a demon on the brakes anyways. I wasn't really getting better braking performance as in distances with it being lower. The car just feels like it stops on a dime compared to some of the other ones. But yeah, don't be afraid to change this around at all. Let's see, the other thing is the wheel rate on the rear is pretty soft. Once again, that's just to try and keep the rear tires kind of in check. The car does naturally want to understeer on corner exit or on power. Normally I'd want to increase the wheel rate to try and kind of combat that a little bit, but ultimately it has a really good balance. I'm trying to keep the balance front to rear as well. I don't want to go any stiffer on the front, and the car feels pretty good basically everywhere. It's just the slow speed corners you do get a little bit of understeer on exit, and then on the differential on the rear too, there's a little bit of adjustability in this, I think. So I have it set on 80. It's just a marginal increase over where it was. Ultimately, this is just for a little bit of security on turn-in, especially in the last sector of the track, the horrible last sector around Catalunya. I hate it so much. But it's still pretty free. The car will still kind of slide a little bit. If you want to secure the car up a little bit more, you can go for an increase on this preload. Just 1 or 2 clicks should be a pretty noticeable difference. If you need to go even more, you can try it for sure. It will increase the security a little bit on turn-in, but you also might get some understeer in the high-speed corners, especially whenever you kind of lift and coast to kind of keep the car in the right line in the high-speed corners around the track, like Sector 1. So it's kind of a trade-off. I wanted a really balanced car through those high speeds, where I didn't really have to think too much, and the car would kind of do what I wanted it to do, and it wasn't super tricky to drive. So ultimately I leaned towards that, and then kind of focused Sector 3 a little bit secondary. But if you want to work on that or change that up, there is a easy adjustment for you there. On the dampers on this car, not really going to talk about too much here. I do just want to point out the bump on the rear of the car. If you want a little bit more rotation when you pick that throttle up on corner exit, you can increase this rear bump just a couple clicks. It should be pretty noticeable. And if you want the car to kind of set and grip a little bit more on corner exit, you can decrease the bump by, once again, just a couple clicks, and it should be pretty noticeable. Trying to set the car up for it to be a little bit neutral at the moment, but the Porsche does just naturally want to understeer a little bit on corner exit. Other than that, just increasing the bump on the front and the rebound on the front as well really helped me help the drivability of the car for me, especially on turn-in after or in the really heavy braking zones. And then the rebound increase as well, just to try and keep the nose loaded up a little bit more and keep the car from understeering in the middle of the corner, which the Porsche kind of does like to do, unfortunately. On the aero side of things, I tried to keep some adjustability in here for you guys and still make the car like neutral and not super twitchy to drive or anything, so hopefully that worked out. But running the ride height at 55 millimeters, ultimately just for a little bit more drivability and control over some of the curbs that you want to hit around this track. It feels pretty good to me. I did try higher to see if it was any better. Didn't really get much more out of it from being higher, other than a ton of understeer from the car, so keeping it there. Front splitter on 3 to kind of improve the grip from the front, especially in the high and medium speed corners. And then I raised the rear of the car just a little bit because I increased the wing angle as well. You do still have some wing you can add onto it, and you have some splitter you can add to the car. If you're wanting to improve the turn-in from the front of the car, especially, like I said, high speed, medium speed corners, you've got 2 more clicks of splitter to add if it's a little bit too twitchy or nervous on turn-in. If you don't want to try the differential adjustment, or if it didn't work for you, you can always take the splitter out of the car, or you can go for an increase in rear wing. Also, you could go for a decrease in rear wing if you want to kind of shift the balance a little bit further forward. As always, you can also increase the rear ride height for a little bit more rotation, and you can decrease it for a little bit more of a grippy feeling from the rear of the car. But anyways, guys, that is the setup for the Porsche around here. I hope you all enjoy it. It does take me quite a bit of time to do these Porsche setups, but I feel like I've really gotten a lot more comfortable. I hope I've gotten better at this as time's kind of gone on. And so I think I may actually try and set up the old car, and then maybe we'll revisit Spa before too long as well, as I know that setup was it's pretty sketchy. It's definitely due an update, I think. But I really actually did enjoy driving the car this time around. So if you do like this, give the video a like. It does help me out a ton. And subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you all so much for just all the support. I really do appreciate it. I hope this helps you all out. And yeah, hopefully I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.